Welcome to the Master Dealmaker's Secrets podcast. And now, here's sales growth strategist, John Blake.
Welcome to Master Dealmaker's Secrets. I'm John Blake. This is episode 67, and today we're going to be talking about your circle of influence versus your circle of concern, which I think is going to be a really timely topic to cover off on in terms of what's going on right now. But first, if you have got lead flow and you want to convert more of those leads into sales, head over to johnblakeaudio.com and grab your free audio training. So this is where I show you the exact strategy that you can use to double sales with your existing lead flow. This is the same strategy that I teach my high ticket clients, and it works consistently once you put it into practice. So head over to johnblakeaudio.com and download your audio training. You'll get the exact word for word scripts in the PDF companion that comes with the training, and the email follow-up templates and the phone script. So this is exactly what to say and exactly when to say it so that you can start to convert some of those leads without annoying people. So it's really professional. It gives you exactly when to send emails and when to call over an 8-week period, and you will find that it works brilliantly once you've got it happening in your business. Okay, so we're going to talk about the circle of influence versus the circle of concern. Now, I first learned about this idea in Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And probably the best way to explain it, I'm going to explain it to you, and then I'm going to give you an example from my own background, which I think illustrates the idea really nicely. But if you can visualize a circle, so like, you know, if you draw a circle, and let's say you color that circle in and make it black, and then you draw a circle around that circle that you've just drawn. So you've got what kind of looks like a target, but with just, you know, one little dot in the middle and then a ring going around it. So what are you talking about, John? So the circle in the middle represents, along Covey's model, your circle of influence. Okay, so within that circle, there are things that you have control over in your life. So they are things that you have direct control over. So as someone in business, they could be how many calls you make. They could be making sure that you arrive to appointments on time. They could be doing what it is that you say that you are going to do by the time that you say that you are going to do it. They are all things that sit within your circle of influence. Another one could be your attitude that you arrive to work with every day, whether you exercise before you start your day. All those type of things all sit fairly and squarely in your circle of influence. Now, if we go outside that little black dot and we move into the space in between that black dot and the circle that sits around that black dot, we call that your circle of concern. And those are the things in your sales life or in your business life that you do not have any direct control over. And those things could be categorized as the product that you sell. Whether it has certain features or benefits that perhaps your competitors' products do have, how much you sell your products for. Another one could be the availability of certain products. So you might have a particular product that has big demand, but you can't seem to keep it in stock. So all of those things are genuine concerns, but as a salesperson or even sometimes as a business owner, there are things that you have control over and things that you do not have control over. And the secret is to understand which ones fit into which category. So at the moment, we don't really have much control over what's going on in the economy and in the world, but we do have control over how we respond and how we decide that we play our cards over this particular period. So it's a really, really important concept, and I find that the success that I see that people have, there's a direct correlation between the amount of time that they spend focused on the things that they do have control over versus the things that they don't have control over. So I want to give you an example of this because, it's all very well for me to talk about, how important this is, but I want to tell you about a time where I perhaps knew about this particular idea. In fact, I'm pretty sure I did, but I choose to ignore it. So I used to run a clothing agency. I was a fashion agent for a number of labels in the surfing industry. And I had been running my business for 8 years, and I'd had a really successful 8 years. I'd represented all of these different brands, and I'd grown the sales in those brands by 200, 300, 400%. And at the time, I was generating, well over $200,000 in commissions. And, that was a pretty good result given the size of my agency, the amount of people that I employed, and the timing. So that was back in when was that? Back in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s. So that was quite a lot of money. And so what had happened? One of the agencies that I was running had reached its peak, and it had begun its decline. It had had heaps of years of organic growth to the point where, the market had matured, and a lot of the big brands had been floated on the stock exchange and were now being run by people that had fairly short-term visions. And the market had become, what is known as a mature market. So the company that I was representing fell into that category. They'd been bought out by a big company, big manufacturing company, and they were in fact the biggest manufacturer of apparel in the Southern Hemisphere. They had a big business, lots of different brands, and what had happened was the market had actually turned as well. So that the market had changed. There was 2 or 3 products that were really, really popular for a long time, and because fashion's so fickle and things had changed, they had decided that they were going to delete these three lines out of the range. Because even though there was still some really good sales in them, they were like, no, we need to delete these, and we need to come up with a fresh range, and we're optimistic that the range we come up with is going to be popular enough to replace the sales that we're making in these 3 brands. So these 3 brands for me, these 3 product categories. There was these shirts, and there was like a particular range of printed T-shirts, and they were super, super popular, and they made up about 50% of the company's annual sales. And so what the decision makers in the business decided to do was to delete those 2 or 3 areas. They were like, let's just take them out of the range. So they deleted them. And so, at that point, I had like a 300 square meter showroom. I had staff. I'd really geared myself up, around the turnover that I was doing. They deleted these particular products out of the range, and so, within 3 months, my sales had, within 6 months, my sales had gone down by 50%. And so, I was in this really nasty situation where I had a commercial lease. My sales were 50% down. Everything was geared up around the turnover that I was doing. And what I did was I started really centering my focus in that circle of concern. I wasn't doing the things that I had control over. I was complaining to people. I was telling anyone that would listen. And the really interesting thing is that I was right, and I knew I was right, but it wasn't serving me. It was bizarre. It was this incredible sense of righteousness that I had, but it wasn't taking me anywhere. It wasn't taking me anywhere. It was literally. It literally meant that I was staying stuck in the situation that I was in. So I, and at the time it was like I was running an agency. I wasn't working. I wasn't an employee of this company. I was running an agency. So I was, literally the definition of a free agent. I could have at that point gone and found any number of new brands, new up and coming popular brands that I could choose to represent. But I didn't. I just chose to whinge about the ones that I had that weren't doing things the way that I thought that they should do them. And it was actually my wife at the time who said to me, "You know what? You've been whinging about this for 2 years." She's like, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And it was quite a monumental moment because firstly, it made me realize, how foolish that I'd been in not shifting my focus away from this whole blame, this pattern of blame that I had. And it really made me pivot, and I thought, wow, okay, I really need to change the way I'm thinking. And not long after that is when I had the idea, having, trained a lot of, having worked with lots of sales, worked with a big sales team and achieved really great results as a mentor and a coach and a sales manager, and having done a whole bunch of training with people in retail stores, was the idea to set up the consulting business. And so it was in that moment that I shifted from my circle of concern back into my circle of influence, that my circle of influence started to grow. And my circle of influence started to encroach in on my circle of concern. And it grew bigger and bigger. And that was when I was able and had the opportunities that started to crop up in terms of setting up the consulting business. So, I guess the big takeout, it's kind of an unusual episode, but I hear it a lot. I work with sales teams and a lot of sales teams and a lot of business owners, and I hear a lot of, external locus of control. What that means is they're thinking about things outside of the things that they have control over. They're thinking outside of their circle of concern. And when that happens, you are controlled by your environment. You're not the cause of your environment, and it's a really important mental shift. If you find yourself in a situation and you're blaming other things, you're blaming other conditions, understand that you actually do have the power to change your thinking. And when you change your thinking, you start to see. When you go back internally and start focusing on your circle of your circle of influence, you start to see new opportunities. But it's only once you make that shift that you actually start to see new opportunities. So at the moment, I'm running a business development focus group for a number of businesses on a fairly regular basis, and if you are interested in becoming part of that, by the way, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, just email me, John, John, at john-blake, blake.com.au. That's my personal email. I do get it and I do respond. So if you want to become part of it, and you're a business owner and you want to become part of the next one, just email me and I'll make sure that I get you all the details. But having that mindfulness to be able to shift from blaming circumstances to then thinking, okay, well, what can I do about this? It can be a game changer, and it's only until you shift that focus that you will actually start to see those new opportunities. So I hope this has been useful, as I have illustrated in the example that I gave you. I'm certainly not immune to this, but it's such an important thing, and I think a timely message for what's going on right now. So thank you for listening, and I will talk to you on the next podcast. Cheers.
You've been listening to Master Dealmaker's Secrets with John Blake. Subscribe to get more in-depth strategies to maximize your sales process with new episodes every week. And double your inquiry to sale conversion with the lead flow you already have. Go to johnblakeaudio.com for his exclusive free no-fluff audio training and companion PDF guide.